everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and today I've got a little surprise sew-along for you. I'm in the middle of a module, the module 1 for my spring and summer wardrobe, and I had posted this pattern, which is M7357. And actually, I'll just pop a link, I'll pop a picture up here, it's easier for you to see. And I had a couple people asking if I would do a little mini sew-along. I think there was issues with the placket on this top, and it's just not typical. It's not hard, it's just not your typical placket. Asking if I would do a little tutorial on how to do that, so I just decided to film myself while I was making it. Let me just say, first of all, I love this blouse so much. It is maybe my favorite thing that I've made so far in my module, and I just want to really quickly touch. I have all 4 of my topper and my 3 tops completely finished. I'm filming my pants sew along tomorrow and the day after, so that'll be finished. And I've had a little hiccup with my skirt, which I thought would be like one of the easiest things to do. I've had I'm having some issues with my stomach. So I don't know if I'm eating something that it's the same like allergic reaction, like I'm having like a flare-up type issue, and my stomach is really swollen, and it has made my waist measurement go up 3 inches in a week. So, which is not typical. Some fluctuation, very, very typical, but it has gone, it's just, my stomach is swollen. So, anyway, I'm kind of wondering if I should push the skirt off onto module 2 and do a different bottom for module 1, just so I would really want to do my lookbook for you guys on Friday. But yeah, I'm still playing around with that. So that skirt might get pushed to module 2 because it'll still go with the whole thing. And I may do something else for the bottoms for module 1 that would be a surprise. Just until I can figure out what the heck is causing these issues, and because it's literally just right at my waist, like my hips are normal, all of my other measurements are normal. It's just that skirt sits right at your natural waist, and it's just, my stomach is swollen and it's just not having it right now. So anyway, that's the issue there, but it's going to be a gorgeous skirt. Anyway, so that is where we are right now. So I decided to go ahead and do just a little sew along, kind of sew with me type of video, although it is still 45 minutes long because I do take you through all the steps and how I'm doing it. I did do a few things differently, so I hope you enjoy that. Like always, leave any questions you have down in the comments below. But before I let you go to the tutorial, I just wanted to say, and I'm going to do a twirl of me actually, I'll do that at the end of the video. So I will do, after the tutorial, I'll do a little twirl of me wearing the top. I'll put that just at the very end before the credits. So stay around for that. But before I let you go, I just want to say thank you. This sewing community is just so responsive and warm and loving and wonderful, and I just want to say thank you guys. For my last video I talked a lot about mental health. I turned the comments off only because I didn't want anyone to say anything accidentally that could be a trigger for someone else, but I've got some of the most wonderful emails and direct messages from you guys. I mean, just warm my heart. Like, you all are wonderful, and I feel so very blessed to not only be able to do this channel that I love, absolutely love doing, but to be able to interact with you guys on a daily basis, because this community is truly filled with some of the best people in the world, in my opinion. So I just wanted to say thank you. I have cried many tears of happiness and just all the warm, wonderful feelings reading your all's messages. So thank you. Thank you for being wonderful. Thank you for being kind, and it's just a great community. So thank you for making this community what it is. And on that note, hey, hit the subscribe button. I've got a whole bunch of like sewing type videos. I've got my tutorial or my sew along for the pants, which is, I'll pop a picture up, S8056, I believe, Simplicity Amazing Fit pant, that I'll be going up next week. And with that, a separate tutorial for how to do a fly zip, a front fly in a pair of pants or a skirt, really anything. So anyway, you don't want to miss any of that. Yeah, but I just wanted to say thank you. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this little sew along, and I will see you guys Friday, I think, with my lookbook for my first module. So you'll actually see the lookbook of the first 6 items before you see the sew along for the pants, which is fine. There's no secret there. So, because I wanted to be able to get started on module 2 here real quick. So to have it all done before May starts. So that's what I've got for today. I've just said the word sew like 18 times. I apologize. And I will see you guys on Friday. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed week. And don't forget, leave comments if you have any questions below. And give a thumbs up if you like this type of video. And I will see you all Friday. Bye. Okay guys, we're going to do a quick little sew with me today. We are doing this pattern, McCall's 7357. I'm doing the view that she's wearing, which is view C. And this is really going to be just me briefly going over the steps with you. I think really the only part that people were having issues with are the placket here. And so I will definitely talk more about that when I get there. As far as fitting with this pattern, this is one of the separate cup sizes. So again, like I've said before, pick a size based on your upper bust. So my upper bust is 36, and that tells me to make a size 14 because it is, the bust for a 14 is 30, you can hardly see that, sorry. The bust for a 14 is 36, so I'm just doing excuse my manicure too, it's growing out. That is my upper bust measurement, so I'm gonna make a 14, but my actual full bust is a 39, so that is a 3-inch difference. So 3-inch difference means I'm going to use the C cup pattern pieces for this one. So that's how I'm doing that. I also did a narrow shoulder adjustment, a little bit of one, and I've done videos on how to do that adjustment as well. So yeah, so without further ado, I'm going to skip around on steps a little bit. Step 1 is to reinforce where we're going to put the placket, but I want that to be done just right when we get to that point. So there's step 1. So I'm going to wait and do the reinforcement here right before we sew the placket so that there's no stress in that area because it has you cutting in to the places where you've sewn. So basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to sew the darts on my front piece. Again, I'm not going to do this step yet. Sew my side panels on, and then sew my side panels to my back, and then I will come back to you. Okay, so my front and my back are all sewn together. I've got my side panels on my front and my back sewn together at the princess seams. So now I'm just gonna go over to my serger and I'm gonna serge my raw hems, and then I'm going to press it, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about the yoke, because I'm gonna do the yoke differently than they have done it in the pattern. So I'll be right back. Okay, I've got everything pressed and serged, so now we're gonna construct our yoke, and it is 2 pieces. It is, I don't know what piece number this is, but it's this little bitty front yoke piece. I think it was probably one of those, the number was written on the outside of it, and I just don't have that. Oops, sorry, at the moment. So that's the front yoke, and you should have 4 of these because we are doing, and again, I'm doing this differently than they have you doing it in the directions. We're going to do the burrito effect, the burrito technique to encase all of our raw edges for this yoke. So you'll have 4 pieces of this, one for the inner yoke and one for the outer yoke or facing or whatever you want to call it. And then you're going to have the back yoke, and that's cut on the fold, and you'll have 2 of these. So what we're gonna do, it doesn't really matter which one's which, but we're just gonna sew these together at the shoulders. So you'll have 2 sewn to the shoulders here and 2 sewn to the shoulders here. So I will do that now. Okay, you now have 2 pieces that kind of look like this. So this kind of curly Q part of the yoke is part of the armhole that kind of goes out. So you have 2 identical pieces that look like this. So I'm going to press the shoulder seams open, and we don't have to finish these because they're going to be encased with one another. So I'm just going to go and press these open, and then I'm going to show you how to do the burrito. Be right back. Okay, first things first, I've got my back here, and this is right side up, and here's the top of my back, right here. And I'm going to take, it doesn't matter which one, because they're identical, but I'm going to take one of these, I'm sorry, I'm gonna flip this up, wrong side up. I wanna do this one first. Okay, so this is wrong side up. And I'm going to take one of these pieces, and I'm going to put the right side of the yoke to the wrong side of the blouse, so that when it's sewn and flipped up, this will be the inside of the shirt. So I've marked my centers, so I'm just going to line all these up. So again, I'm sewing one of these yoke pieces. The yoke piece is right side to the wrong side of the blouse, and I'm going to actually sew these at 3/8 of an inch, not 5/8, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so now that that is sewn, the wrong side of your shirt has a nice clean finish up here at the top. It's clearly not been pressed yet, but that's the wrong side of the shirt that you're seeing right here. So now we're gonna fold that back down the way it was just sewn, and we are going to, on the right side of the shirt, so now the shirt's right side up, we are gonna put this other yoke piece right side. So this is more typical, right sides together. And this time we are gonna sew it at 5/8 of an inch. So we did the other one at 3/8 of an inch just to make sure that that line of stitching is caught in your seam allowance. So now we're gonna sew this at 5/8 of the seam allowance. And I guess technically you could do these steps at the same time, but I just find it less shifty to do them in 2 passes. Okay, so now when you fold these both up, you've got this yoke seam that's encasing both sides. So now I'm just gonna go and I'm going to press both of these pieces up. Okay, so I have everything pressed up, so my back is looking very nice. So now I'm going to lay my back, we're gonna do the burrito now. I'm gonna lay my back with the wrong side up, and I'm gonna lay my top right side up. So basically this is how, if you were wearing the top, this is how it would lay together. So wrong sides are together for the top piece and the back piece. Sorry, the front piece and the back piece. So I'm going to take the inner yoke. So remember, this is the wrong side of the back part of the shirt, but the inner yoke is right side out. So we're just gonna match wrong side of the front to the right side of this inner yoke at both shoulder seams, and we're gonna sew them at 3/8. Okay, this is where it gets kind of confusing. Okay, so this is the right side of the shirt. That's the right side of the front, and there's the right side of the back. And you can see we've got this yoke piece that's just kind of flapping in the wind. We're going to sew these together, and then we will have our shirt together with nice, all these raw seams will be enclosed. Oh, well no, yeah, we're not gonna do that yet. Okay, so all these raw seams are gonna be enclosed nice and neat. So what you're gonna do is you're going to lay your shirt with the front up. Hopefully you can see. I'm gonna move the camera just a hair so you can maybe see this a little bit better for now. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got this extra yoke piece pointing down at the moment. And these are the shoulder seams that we just sewed at 3/8 of an inch are right up here. And we are going to take the shirt and roll it. And pretty soon we're rolling it, and pretty soon you can see this yoke piece that's just hanging out here that we push down. So now we're just gonna take our shoulder seams, so you've got this whole shirt is rolled up right here, and we're gonna match our shoulder seams here, right side together, and sew that at 5/8 of an inch for both sides. And then I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, so now that I'm done, you're gonna have this weird little bundle where everything is kind of tucked up inside. That's the whole shirt, like rolled up inside there. And really, all you're gonna do is grab the roll and pull it out. And then you've got, hold on. Your shirt, so see, you can see the yoke is completely encased. This is the right side of the front, and you can see the yoke is neatly encased there in the back. And then again at the shoulder seams, this is the inside of the top, it's all nicely encased. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna press those shoulder seams that we just did, and then I'm gonna go through and I'm going to baste, because these yoke pieces are, you know, two pieces. So when we're putting this, both the sleeve in and the placket, it's much easier if these are basted. So I'm just gonna go through and baste these yoke pieces together at the neck edge. Number one, that's a stay stitching that will help it not stretch out. And number two, it keeps those two layers together when we apply both the placket and the sleeve in the later step. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my top together at the shoulders, and my yoke is all attached. Everything's clean. I've gone through and I've just basted the two layers at 3/8 of an inch. I've gone through and basted my yokes together at the armhole and at the neckline so that everything will sew together nicely. So now we're gonna do the placket. And again, I still have not sewn the front part of this yet and clipped in. I'm gonna wait until right before we sew the neckline on to do that. So now we're going to construct our, I'm gonna set this aside, we're going to construct our placket. So your placket, or your neckline placket, consists of two front pieces and then your back neck. And you should have interfaced, this one's interfaced, it's kind of hard to tell. You should have interfaced two of the front pieces and one of the back pieces. So obviously your front pieces get sewn the back pieces at the shoulder, and you want to do your interfaced pieces together, and then your uninterfaced pieces together. So I'm just going to sew these together, right sides together at the shoulders, and then press them, and then I will come right back. Okay, I really quickly wanted to point out, when you're sewing your fronts to your, when you're sewing your fronts to the back, up here, can you see how there's a jog in the, you know, like it extends, this back part extends further past the front. It's kind of hard to tell because it's white, but there's a difference there. And then the same with the back, there's a difference. That's okay. Match up your notches and you're gonna have that jog. You just wanna make sure that 5/8 of the inch down, it matches and it's the same width, and it is. So when you're, because sometimes it can be very confusing as to which thing that you're sewing. So when you flip it up and you have right sides out, you've got, this is the shorter curve, the inner curve, so everything's right side out. You want to make sure that the pieces that are sewn, so the inner curve goes there, and then it does that weird jog in. So where it bends in matches up with the inside. So you are matching your notches, but that it's such a narrow area, it gets kind of confusing, and I honestly did sew these on backwards just a second ago. So I just wanted to make note of that. Look at the picture in the instructions and it does show you, but yeah. For the inner circle, this is the wrong side. For the inner circle, it's where it bends in with the inner side of the neckline. Okay. Now I'm going to press my seam allowances open at the shoulder. And then we are, I think, gonna sew these together. So let me go press those real quick and I will be right back. Okay, now we're gonna sew these two pieces together. So we're gonna put them right sides together, and we're actually going to sew, helps if you match it up correctly. Okay, we're actually gonna sew along the inside curve of the neck facing. So when you look at the neck facing, I keep putting my hand in front of it. That's not helpful, Whitney. All right, when you're sewing, you know, you've got the longer curve here at the bottom and the shorter curve here at the top. The shorter curve is what's gonna wrap around your neck because this gets attached. This isn't like a typical facing that gets attached and tucked into the inside of the blouse. This actually kind of acts like a collar, kind of like a placket. So we're going to sew these together along the top edge, which is the shorter curve. We're gonna sew along this top edge here, not the longer curve, but the shorter curve along the inside. So we're gonna sew those right side together and then we're going to understitch. I'll talk about that in just Okay, I have it all sewn along that top edge. So that's the back neck facing you're looking at. So I'm going to trim this down to like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to understitch it. And I want the interface side to be the side that the public sees. So I want this side to be the side that's outside. So that means I'm just gonna push the seam allowance to the uninterfaced side and stitch really close to the seam line on the side that is not interfaced. And I think the directions actually tell you to do that opposite, to have the interfaced piece be on the inside, but I like my interfaced pieces to always be the one facing the public. So that's what I'm gonna do. Trim it down to 1/4 of an inch and then understitch it all the way around. Okay, so it'll be all fluty like that, which is normal. So as you can see, there we go. I have a little line of stitching and it's on the uninterfaced side, and from the back, all of the seam allowance is pushed to the interface side, and that's how it's understitched. So now I'm gonna go and I'm going to press it all nice and neat, making sure that that all turns into the interface side, because that'll be the side inside the top, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got everything pressed, understitched, ready to go. Now I'm gonna do that step that I told you to skip earlier with the front of the top. So the front of the top has like this rectangle kind of cut out of it, and there's dots that have you pivoting. You can barely see them. See those pink dots? That's where we're gonna sew. So I'm gonna start about an inch at 5/8, and I'm gonna sew down to the dot, across, and up. And then I'm going to clip diagonally to my stitching at those points. Okay, so that's been stitched and reinforced, and you'll have this weird little triangle thingy here. So now I'm going to pin my neck facing, or placket, whatever you want to call it, right sides together, and I'm only sewing the interface side to the right side of the blouse. I'm leaving the facing free, because that's going to get tucked to the inside, but we're going to stop the little dot at the bottom of the pattern piece for that front placket piece. That dot's gonna match up to this dot right here. And so we'll stop sewing at those dots. But other than that, we're gonna go all the way around, and I'm actually gonna pin this. And again, it's right sides together. Okay, so I've got the facing side all sewn in, and that is a difficult sew. Hold on, you're having a hard time seeing that, aren't you? Okay, so I'm gonna show you the, again, this is all floppy because the side seams aren't done. Let me show you the right side. Maybe. Okay. All right. All right, so your right side looks like this. I've got a weird crease pressed in there. Okay, I have a weird crease that's pressed in there. I'll need to unpress that. But anyway, what you're going to do next, so down here at the bottom where it's kind of weird because you started and stopped at those dots. You matched up the dots to the bottom of the placket. So down here is this weird little spot where you've got this weird little triangle, because this is where you've cut in, and then you've got the facing. It's just got a raw edge there, and that's fine on both sides. Not the facing, the placket. And that's okay for right now. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna press, and I'm just gonna press the seam allowance of this neck edge towards the placket, because eventually this facing is gonna come around. That's gonna get tucked under, and you're gonna slip stitch that closed. So it'll be a nice clean finish on the inside. But first you need to press your seam allowances toward the facing. And I'm actually gonna go in and clip this down the seam allowance down pretty, down to like, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch, just because there's some pretty deep curves here, and that's gonna help all that sit really nice. So I would suggest doing that. So I'm gonna do that real quick, and then I'm gonna press it, and then we'll come back. Okay, before we move on, I just wanted to show you, I've moved the camera here so you can kind of see, since this is kind of the tricky part. So again, we have the interfaced, I need to press that a little nicer. The interface side of the placket has been sewn to the neckline all the way up, and I've got the facing that's been understitched, and it has not been sewn down yet. And here at the end, we're just going to fold that under and hand stitch that down to the seam allowance all the way around. But for now, we'll do that, obviously, hand stitching at the very end. But I wanted to show you what this looked like here at the front. So this is where we sewed the box around the rectangle and then clipped diagonally into the corners. So it doesn't, the only way that it'll really lay flat is if you fold that seam allowance under and then kind of turn it. Again, we haven't sewn this down yet, so yeah, just kind of finger press that. So we have, this will lie flat, and we get hook and eyes, I think 2. That kind of get hidden back here because this closes, because when this is on, I've just kind of draped this over my body, and this is a really deep V, but it closes with a couple hook and eyes up here. So anyway, you have this like so, with this weird little bit here. And then the next step that we've got is we're gonna turn this inside out and actually sew this little triangle to, actually it gets turned down. That gets turned down, and it gets, we're gonna flip and sew, kind of like a welt pocket. And we're gonna sew that little triangle bit just right along that previous line of stitching that's right there to the placket edge. So that is our next step. So I'm gonna do that real quick, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I've got my shirt right side up, and I've pulled my little triangle down. So now I'm just going to pull it up. Woo! Throw some scissors. Because I just want to sew that little triangle, and I pulled it through to the right side. I'm going to sew along that previous stitching and stop at those 2 corners where I clipped. But I'm sewing those to the placket. And you're gonna want to have your seam allowances turned in on those plackets. Okay, so then when all is said and done, this is the outside of the shirt. When all is said and done, you have your 2 placket pieces that have now been sewn to that little triangle piece that's right there. So if you look at the inside of the shirt, it's nice and clean. There we go. That's the inside of the shirt. And again, we have not slip stitched any of the side down, but I did fold that in to the placket so it got caught when I was sewing that. So now it asks you to trim the seam allowance. So I'm just gonna, and I think we're trimming, yeah, I think we're trimming everything. So we're just, it says 1/4 of an inch, but maybe just a hair bigger than that, because we're gonna sew this tab over it here in a second. So just want to trim off that excess. Sorry, it's hard to keep this right side out since we don't have side seams attached yet. So this is what it's gonna look like on the front. You've just got that clipped area, and then we're gonna cover it up with the tab piece that came, which I think is piece 7 if I remember correctly. So for this, I actually went ahead and interfaced mine just so it's a little sturdier. But what we're gonna do is it wants you to sew, down, down, turn the corner, but leave a gap in the middle so that you can flip it right side out. So you're basically sewing a rectangle, but we're gonna leave a little space, I don't know, maybe an 1.5 inch space right there so that we can easily flip this. So I'm gonna do that really quick. Okay, so this tab literally just gets placed over the bottom of this placket, and I have stuck this on with double-sided tape, the sewing stuff that Dritz makes, and it comes in like a little roll like this. This is 3/8 inch wide, and it's just like a sewing, it washes out, a temporary double-sided stick tape. I don't think it's the Wonder Under, but it's something kind of similar to that. And now I'm literally just going to sew around the perimeter of this tab, and our placket will almost be done. So let me do that real quick. All right, so this kind of looks like a big scrappy mess, doesn't it? So there we've got our placket that I'm trying to grab onto. So the last step, so that tab, it's an interesting way to finish that. And I don't know if that it would have been I don't know how I would have finished that differently, but whatever, that's what the pattern calls for, it's what we're gonna do. So now I'm gonna give everything a good press, but then to finish this placket, all I have to do is on the inside with this loose edge is just tuck it under, and I'm gonna hand stitch that to the seam allowance all the way around the neck edge, which is, I've been into kind of hand sewing a little more lately. I kind of go through phases. Sometimes I want it to be quick and dirty, and sometimes I don't mind sitting in front of the TV and doing some hand sewing. So I'm actually gonna hand sew this. But yeah, that's all we need to do, and then the placket will be finished. So now we're gonna do the sleeves, and I'm gonna construct the sleeves real quick, serge the edges, and I'm actually going to install them flat instead of in the round, just because that's kind of my preferred method. I just think it's quicker and easier. So that's what I will do next. And just want to note, let me grab, sorry. This is a 3-piece sleeve, and that's because there's options to contrast. So I'm just sewing, I'm leaving my underarm seam, which would be this side seam for the sleeve front, and I think they have 1 notch, and then the side seam for the sleeve back. I'm gonna leave that one open because that's the underarm seam. So yeah, I'm gonna sew my sleeves flat and leave the underarm seam. I'm going to finish the seam allowances with my serger and press them, and I will come back as soon as they are all made up. Alright, I have both sleeves all constructed, and they're flat. And again, I'm not using a contrasting fabric, so mine's just the same fabric. So I've got the 2 seams. And I've gone ahead and at the hem put a basting stitch because this sleeve gets gathered into a cuff that I will do that in the round. So that's after we've got everything all sewn together. So now I'm just going to insert these flat, which you can do when you've not yet sewn up the side seams of your blouse, which we have not. So basically, it's just, I'm sure you guys know how to do this, but it's just sewing, this is my armhole, going from side seam to side seam, and I'm just gonna sew the sleeve, and I'll match up my notches just like if I were sewing it in the round. But I sew with my sleeve against the bead dogs because it helps ease that sleeve cap ease in without me having to do it by hand. So I am going to do that now. Okay, I have sleeves in my blouse. All right, trying to get this all, again, we still don't have the side seams up, and my facing on my neckline here keeps flopping out. But now you should have something that somewhat resembles a blouse. So we've got our neckline done, except for the facing we need to hand stitch down. Our sleeves have been sewn on, but they are still a flap in the wind. So now, obviously I'll turn this right sides together, but I'm going to sew from the hem up to the hem of the sleeve. So it's one continuous line from the hem of the garment all the way up to the hem of the sleeve, and obviously right sides together. And we will have like a for real blouse by then. And then we just have to add the cuffs and hem it. So we're almost done. So let me sew up and serge the side seam slash sleeve seam. And then we will serge it, press it, and then I will meet you back here. Okay, we're almost at the finish line, and I'm gonna just tell you guys, I just tried it on because now we've got a shirt. So now we have a shirt. Again, crazy facing, still looks a little crazy. I'm in love with this shirt though. I just tried it on just out of curiosity, and I am really loving it. So now what we're gonna do, we have these gather stitches down here. I have a hair in my mouth. And we are going to gather the sleeve into these sleeve cuffs. So first we need to construct the sleeve cuffs. And actually, I'm really digging the way that they're doing this. it seems like pretty straightforward. So what we're gonna do is sew these cuff pieces, and they're on straight of grain, which makes them really easy to handle. We're gonna sew them short ends together, press those open, and then they're gonna get folded in on each other, sewn to the sleeve, and then that gets doubled back over. So I will show you. That's probably really confusing the way I just said that. But let's sew our short ends together. Okay, so I have now sewn my cuffs, and I think I may have been talking to a camera that was turned off. Anyway, what I've done is I have sewn the cuff pieces short ends together and pressed it open, and then I have folded them on each other, wrong sides together. So we've got right sides both in and outside this loop. We are now going to sew this right sides together with the sleeve, and we're going to gather the sleeve to fit this cuff, and then I'll show you how we're going to finish off the seam, and it's pretty smart. So I'm going to gather the sleeve to fit this cuff, and I will show you what that looks like before I sew it on. So I have gathered, I've got this cuff and it's over the right side of the sleeve, and I've gathered that bottom of that sleeve to fit inside that cuff. And now I'm just gonna sew it at 5/8 of an inch, and then I'll show you what we're gonna do next. Okay, once this is all sewn, focus. There we go. Once this is sewn, we're going to press, you should have it all nice and gathered into this cuff, and we're gonna press the seam allowance up, and I'm gonna trim mine down, because then, you know, we've got this nice finished folded edge here. We're just gonna fold it around and slip stitch that to the inside. So you'll have this real nice finish. Isn't that lovely? I really like the way they've done that. So yeah, we're just gonna press the sleeve seam allowance into the cuff, and like I said, I'm gonna trim mine. And then we're just gonna fold it down on itself and slip stitch that to the seam allowance. And then our sleeve is finished. And then we're going to do a narrow hem for the hem. We're gonna hand stitch this facing on the inside of the placket to the seam allowance as well. Just go around and fold that under and press that in place, and then slip stitch that down. And then in the front, they have you put 2 hook and eyes. So you can kind of see where this placket is straight and then it starts to curve out. I'm gonna put a hook and eye right there where it starts to curve out, and then one down below, because again, this is pretty low cut. So those hook and eyes are just gonna keep that closed for you. And then your blouse is done. So that's it, guys. A very simple and easy sew along. And I'll show you my twirls and stuff in it here in a second. Okay, it's been fun. Bye. Okay, I said I was leaving you and I lied. I just wanted to do a close-up. I have everything pinned in now. So now I just need, this is the front of the shirt, this is the right side, and you can see I've got my pins in where I've pinned down my neckline facing, so I'm gonna hand stitch all of that into place. I've got my hem done, and I just did a narrow hem. You could also do bias tape at the bottom of your hem if you wanted to, which I like to do with curved hems a lot. And then I've got my cuff folded over. There's that folded edge right there, and that'll get slip stitched to the inside. And then my shirt is done. Oh, no, it's not. And then this is the area I was talking about, is where we'll put the hook and eyes that the pattern calls for. So I'll probably put the first one like right here where it starts to split. I'll put one there, and then maybe one like right here in the middle, in between the bottom and there. And we'll be finished. I'm really digging this shirt. So that's it for this quick, I use that in quotation marks. Just a nice fun little sew along. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon.